Hello, and welcome to another episode of Not Fake News. This time, rather than reading from the failing New York Times or the Washington Post or PBS NewsHour, we'll be reading from a book entitled Squeezed, Why Our Families Can't Afford America by Alyssa Quart, published by ECCO, a division of HarperCollins Publishing, 2018. We'll be reading excerpts from Chapter 3, entitled Extreme Daycare, The Deep Cost of American Work. In the garden of Dee's Tots Childcare, amid the sunflowers, cornstalks, and plastic cars, a 3-year-old girl with beads in her braids and a blonde 2-year-old boy were shimmying. These were Dolores Hogan's 6:45 p.m. pickups. Also, nearby dancing, were 4 kids who wouldn't be picked up until late at night, as well as 2 overnight babies, as Dolores called them. Dolores Tots Childcare stayed open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this irregular cycle of drop-offs and pickups resulted from the unconventional hours worked by the children's parents. Dee's Tots Childcare is only one of a number of 24-hour childcare centers around the country. Just on this single block in New Rochelle, New York, there was another facility called Little Blessings that offered overnight care as well. The growth of this industry reflects the upheaval in American work lives. A huge and growing proportion of us now work an expanded work week with unpredictable working hours. This reflects, among other things, the 24/7 business environment of the 21st century, both the digital economy and the freelance and gig economy, as well as the failure of wages to rise to match the growth of the overall economy, meaning that wages haven't kept up with costs, even at a time of low inflation. The rise of 24/7 daycare also reflects the disempowerment of unions, and with that, the extreme corporate schedules that have shattered the traditional work week and hours for employees. And to call it disempowerment is not an exaggeration. Although 30% of Americans were in unions in the 1960s, now only 11% of all workers are union workers, and only 7% of private sector employees are union members. As of 2004, nearly 40% of Americans had experienced non-standard work lives, if by standard is meant the now semi-mythical 8-hour daily shift of the past. According to the National Women's Law Center, 9% of daycare center care is now provided during evenings or weekends. In addition, almost 2/3, or 64.2% of women with children under the age of 6 are working, and 1 in 5 working moms of small children work at low-wage jobs that typically pay $10.50 per hour. Skipping forward to page 71, the author discusses how a new phenomenon called just-in-time scheduling puts additional stress on working families. Just-in-time scheduling sets peculiar and erratic working hours that serve the company's needs with little regard for those of the employees, such as a sudden call to an employee to work a shift with little notice, now an ever-present possibility in our culture of overwork. Besides being called into work on short notice, workers may also be expected to work hours that fall outside the typical 9-to-5 schedule. Indeed, in 2015, unpredictable work schedules governed the lives of 17% of American workers, according to the Economic Policy Institute. As the labor specialist and City University of New York professor of history Joshua Freeman told me, quote, "Only a tiny number of Americans now have a normal 5-day, 40-hour work week," unquote. A 2014 Gallup poll had similar disturbing findings. Although full-time is still defined as a 40-hour work week, not even 4 in 10 Americans employed full-time work this little. In fact, 42% work 40 hours, and roughly 50% work more than 40 hours. The average is 47 hours. Only 8% of full-time employees say that they work fewer than 40 hours, and 18% work 60 hours a week or more. Skipping forward to pages 72 and 73, the author ties in the high cost of childcare that stresses families with young children, even as work schedules and hours become more erratic and demanding. Quote, "If middle-class parents have become an endangered species, pressed in on every side by harsh work-family policies, the cost of childcare is very much to blame. The United States is close to the bottom of the ranks of wealthy nations with respect to our federal child care expenditures as a percentage of gross national product." Joya Misra, a professor of sociology at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, has analyzed data from thousands of parents from different social classes. One study of middle-class academic parents was based on hundreds of surveys and focus group interviews, and 17 one-on-one interviews. Many survey participants talked about the shock of daycare costs, which can devour 30% of one income in a two-salary household, Misra says. In 33 states and the District of Columbia, the cost of center-based daycare, let alone a nanny for an infant, is higher than the cost of a year at a public college. Well, that's all for this segment of Not Fake News. If you'd like to read more, the book again is called Squeezed: Why Our Families Can't Afford America by Alyssa Hort. That's all for now. Thank you.